It's a very general instrument. A synthesizer is to a musician what a palette of paints is to an artist. It gives him all the basic building blocks from which to build his sounds.
An orchestra at your fingertips, the new wave of music, where your imagination sets the limits. Tonight on 5 at Large. The origins of man-made music are somewhat obscure. It might have been clicking rocks or dropping different sized stones into a pool, or any of a variety of ear-pleasing noises that eventually brought forth Beethoven, Louis Armstrong, and the 1910 Fruit Gum Company. But now there's something new on the scene, an electronic box that's so crammed full of musical noises that no one's figured out how many there are yet. Welcome to the future, and see what the electronic synthesizer can do. The one-man band has come a long way from the fellow on the street corner who could play the harmonica, washtub, bass, and drum simultaneously. Witness Dave Fredericks, virtuoso on the synthesizer, an electronic marvel with almost unlimited potential, and a musical monument to man's ingenuity and futuristic technology.
You can make virtually any sound that you can imagine on a synthesizer. You can make the sound of thunder and lightning, wind blowing through trees, trumpets, tubas, and thousands, virtually countless instruments of your own creation. In other words, you can set up a synthesizer to make any sound that you can imagine in your head. Sometimes a particular synthesizer may not quite be big enough to make the sound that you're thinking of, but there are always ways of hooking synthesizers together to make these sounds.
What sort of inspiration brought about the synthesizer? Well, there's no better way to find out than to ask the man who built one.
I've been a frustrated amateur musician all my life. One of the problems with amateur musicians is that they don't have too much time to learn how to play a lot of different kinds of instruments, to find what kind of instruments they can play best. And they're always looking at the fellow with the other instrument and wondering whether they could have done better with another instrument. We're talking about the possibility of having musicians who have only time to learn one technique or two techniques to produce the sounds that would take them many, many creative lifetimes to learn.
The synthesizer is definitely a creative tool, probably the most varied instrument any musician could hope for. But if you expected elves or descendants of Antonio Stradivari to be putting them together, take a look. All those beautiful sounds come from a bunch of printed circuits and several miles of wire. It's a little startling to see music going the way of the American automobile, and doubtless it won't be long before ARP has to recall synthesizers because of a faulty D sharp. But it's the best way to get the job done.
Synthesizers are high technology instruments. The insides are comparable to, say, the insides of a small computer, something of this nature. The components that we use and the assembly techniques and so forth are very similar. There's a lot of integrated circuits, transistors, and other types of parts that are common to high technology electronics.
Actually, assembly line techniques have become necessary to keep up with the tremendous demand for synthesizers. The ARP plant in Newton has gone from a small workshop to the largest producer of synthesizers in the world. And there are plans for new and better instruments in a new and bigger plant. Why all the popularity? It's really due to a rather simple principle that has a surprisingly complex result.
A synthesizer is really very closely analogous to any mechanical sound-generating device. Like, for instance, your voice. In a human, you have your vocal cords vibrate and produce a raw sound, which by itself would just be a buzzing kind of sound. And your mouth acts as a filter to shape the sounds. A synthesizer works in the same way. You start with a device called an oscillator, which produces a raw sound. Then you have devices called filters, which take these raw sounds and shape them. They amplify certain harmonics and attenuate other harmonics until you get the sound that you're looking for. This is a process called subtractive synthesis. It's called subtractive because you start with a raw signal, a buzzing sound, for instance, which has all the harmonics in, and then you use filters to cut out those harmonics that you don't want and to amplify the ones that you want to have being even stronger.
Well, there they are, electronic voice boxes with limitless potential. If you're thinking of rushing out and buying one for Junior, check your bank balance. Prices start at $1,200. The price tag hasn't deterred the world of music, though. Most rock bands have synthesizers, and they're now being used in connection with classical concerts, television commercials, and movie scores. Oh yes, synthesizers are used for solo artists, too. So no matter what you're in the mood for, the press of a finger can bring it up instantly.